I think by now most, if not all, have become aware that Arch Manning committed to Texas over Georgia. It looked like it was between those two, and Texas ultimately won that battle for now. But Kirby Smart, got right out to it. Pretty soon after that, made some comments on Georgia's quarterback room, a quarterback room that is loaded and will survive without Arch Manning, suffice to say. And I think they're interesting. So we're going to talk about Kirby Smart and the quarterback room today because it's a diverse group and it's one of the best quarterback rooms in the country, if not the best, as far as depth and talent on the roster. I mean, 1 through 4, you got a good group of guys running your offense. Ryan Curley from Dog Post here, talking about Georgia's quarterbacks and what Kirby Smart had to say about them. Before that, make sure you're checking out DAWGSTRUCTION, our insider book, for all the best pictures and stories of Georgia's national championship run. Like this guy and what he has to say today about the quarterbacks. And make sure you're checking out our preview magazine for the 2022 season. Links down below for all of that good stuff. I'm going to go ahead and read this quote to you. He said this on the Crane & Company podcast the other day. Kirby said this: "I would easily say this is the best when you take a picture of the whole room, top to bottom, those 4 guys that are going to meet in that quarterback room in a fall camp. The most depth we've ever had. Especially the most depth of the guys that I know and trust can play the position." That's high praise, and I think Kirby knew what he was doing when he came out and said this publicly, especially after a big thing that was a super, one of the highest, we're in the internet era, right? So a super highly watched and covered commitment and recruiting trail in Arch Manning. So, yeah, there's going to come some drama, and Kirby Smart got out ahead of it. Here's your 1 through 4. Stetson Bennett, national championship winning quarterback. Carson Beck, high 4-star out of Florida, who had a fantastic high school career with a state championship. Brock Vandegrift, 5-star dual threat, hometown kid from just down the road, Prince Avenue High School, that people rave about. A lot of people think he's going to be the starter in 2023. 6'3", cannon of an arm, just hasn't completely put it all together yet. And then 4-star quarterback Gunnar Stockton from Rabun County, who is a really exciting football player to watch. Someone I got to watch a good bit in high school, going from his freshman year until his senior year. I watched a lot of Gunnar Stockton, actually. And every time I left, I was more impressed with him. I think I've said that on here before. Way up there in all the Georgia record books, up there with Jake Fromm and Deshaun Watson and those guys, and Trevor Lawrence. Gunnar Stockton's name's right up there with all those Georgia records for high school passing yards and total touchdowns, all of that good stuff. So it's a loaded quarterback room. And the only guy that wasn't a 4 or 5-star was one of the leaders on the national championship team. Say what you want about the defense carrying it. Stetson Bennett made plays when it mattered most, and he had a good season outside of 8 or 9 quarters. Stetson Bennett was really impressive last year, in my opinion. And Arch Manning would complicate that room a little bit next year. I don't think he would start if he came to Georgia. If somehow he flipped his commitment and he decides to go to Georgia, I don't think he would start. I think that would go to Carson Beck or Brock Vandegrift. But Georgia's quarterback room is loaded. I think Kirby's got confidence that if something happened to Stetson or if Stetson doesn't play well, he can load out Carson Beck or Brock Vandegrift and Georgia would still find success. Obviously, Gunnar Stockton's still going to be a pretty raw football player since he's only been at the program for, about 6 months now. I think the early enrollees arrive and start practicing in December. And I heard he's done well, but, he's a freshman. The size thing kind of goes out the window with guys like Stetson Bennett and Gunnar Stockton because we've seen that small quarterbacks can succeed. You saw a small quarterback win the Heisman this past year, and you saw a small quarterback win the national championship, and you saw those guys face off against each other in the national championship. The talent is there, and the depth is there. Is this the deepest quarterback room they've have? Yeah. 18 you had Fromm and Fields, so as far as star power, that was really deep. You had Eason and Fromm in 2017, so that was a really deep room. Last year, basically trade JT Daniels for Gunnar Stockton. That was obviously a deep quarterback room too. I would consider this one deeper because of the experience now with those guys. Brock Vandegrift's had a full year in the program. Carson Beck's had a full 2 years in the program, and he can really sling the football. and then you add a guy like Gunnar Stockton. JT Daniels, you didn't get a lot out of him at Georgia. He was hurt a lot. And so all those guys are really capable. So Georgia's in a good position for quarterbacks. And I read the comments. I read the comments. I see what people write. I see other people's videos. And I think the general consensus is that Georgia's okay, that they lost out on Arch Manning. And it's because they have the talent. They have the next guys up after Stetson Bennett. This is going to be his last go-round for Georgia football. His eligibility runs out after this season. So this is his last go-round. So if we're talking about this year and the future, Georgia's quarterbacks are set for the next couple of years. Now, the recruiting never stops. There's going to be 4 and 5 star guys that Kirby's looking at in every class. And he's going to get some of them because he's Kirby Smart, and this is the Georgia Bulldogs. They're going to get 4 and 5 star quarterbacks. And they have 2 4-stars on the roster. They have a 5-star on the roster, and they have a championship-winning quarterback on the roster. How many? I mean, no other quarterback room can say that they have that type of depth. I think that Alabama's quarterback room is impressive when you consider Bryce Young, and you consider, just the flashes that Jalen Milroe, if I'm pronouncing his name right, the backup quarterback, showed at Auburn's A-Day, their spring game. Jalen Milroe looks like someone that could be the starter in the future, because this is Bryce Young's. We'd be surprised if Bryce Young stayed after this year, right? I mean, he's going to be in the Heisman conversation again. He's eligible for the NFL draft after next year. He's already projected to be a top 5 pick, if not the first pick overall. So I would say this is Bryce Young's last go-around for college football. So that's a talented quarterback room. You got Oklahoma's quarterback room was up there last year when you had Caleb Williams and Spencer Rattler. Obviously, you look at stuff like that, but 1 through 4, I don't think you could say there's another quarterback room like this, because it goes 4 deep as far as talent goes. And Kirby can't develop the quarterbacks. Kirby can't keep the quarterbacks. Well, he's got 4 really good ones right now. He had 4 really good ones last year. Maybe some of them aren't as experienced as other because they're not on the field as much, because you can't play 4 quarterbacks all at once. You just can't. It's hard to play 2 at once. We've seen a lot of people fail to do that. And how many garbage time minutes you're going to get. You can't know that before the season goes. Now, Georgia's going to get those garbage time minutes, and that is a great opportunity. Georgia's going to have opportunities to develop the guys behind Stetson Bennett this year, because there's a few games they should be blowing the opponent out. I mean, you'd think that they would blow out Missouri. You'd think that they would blow out Georgia Tech. You'd think they'd blow out Vanderbilt. You think they'd blow out Samford. Teams like that, I imagine there's going to be another blowout or 2 mixed in there. They're going to win games comfortably. Carson Beck and Brock Vandagriff are going to get opportunities to come in and, man, I started talking so fast I lost my breath. Wow. Carson Beck and Brock Vandagriff are going to get their opportunities to play this year. I don't imagine we'll see much of Gunnar Stockton, but we did see a little Brock Vandagriff last year. He got in there a little bit. So who knows? Who knows what you could see out of Gunnar Stockton? Who knows how the depth chart's going to go? Kirby likes continuity, but I know it's a weekly competition. He notices what happens in practice. It's part of why Stetson Bennett had a firm grasp. He had a pretty firm grasp on that starting role after a while, because of how well he was performing in practice and how well they were playing on the field. You lost 1 game in Alabama. You had a really bad game, Stetson Bennett, but the trust was in you. Played really well in the Orange Bowl. Had a really great second half against Alabama National Championship. That first half was, for both teams, was rough. It was a rough first half as far as offense goes, and they picked it up in the second half, and he made the right plays. With Stetson, he can make those plays with his legs. And so these 4 guys are really impressive. Carson Beck is a gamer. There's a lot of confidence in this. The program has a lot of confidence in Carson Beck. George Pickens wanted him to throw for him at his pro day. He knows that he can really sling the football. And the potential with Carson, or with Brock Vandagriff and Gunnar Stockton, is there. So those are the guys of the future, is those 3 guys. Because we think Stetson Bennett is the now. We're pretty sure it's the now. He was the starter at G-Day. And I imagine he's going to start the season. Who knows what could happen. But loaded quarterback room. Kirby had another comment. Brock Vandagriff's I basically said this, he's been through 2 springs. Beck's had a couple springs. And he's seen them in spring games. He's getting to see them in action. He knows Stetson's played a lot of football games from what we saw last year. Just kind of reiterating the experience, that these guys have had a few off seasons under their belt in Athens, and that's really helpful and adds to the depth and the experience in your room. Georgia's got the deepest quarterback room in college football. If I didn't think that at the beginning of this video, I definitely think it now. DAWGSTRUCTION, dawgpost.com, links below. See you there.